Good morning, everybody. My name is Danica TJ, and I'm an eye care specialist with the East Baton Rouge Parish School System. And this morning, I have the pleasure to introduce my coworkers, Mr. Pete Jory and Mr. Melvin Sanders. Pete Jory obtained his master's in professional counseling from Liberty University in 2015 and his master's degree in divinity from New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary in 2001. Pete is currently working as an eye care specialist in the East Baton Rouge Parish School System. Mr. Melvin Sanders received his MA from Southeastern Louisiana University Health and Kinesiology and his BA in Psychology from Millsaps College. His goal is to educate and facilitate prevention education to the parents, students, faculty, staff, and community of the East Baton Rouge Parish School System. May I please present Mr. Pete Jory and Mr. Melvin Sanders. If you need to refer to the eye care website for additional bio and contact information on our speakers, feel free to do so. Enjoy the presentation.
Good morning to everyone. It is definitely an honor and a privilege to be able to present to you today. I am Melvin Sanders Jr. I have with me my colleague right here.
Hey everybody, how are you doing? My name is Pete Jory. Good morning.
This morning, we will be doing a presentation on what everyone must know about vaping. We have a lot of information to go over, and we want to be engaging and want to inform you. And we want to, if at all possible, wait to the end for any questions and answers as we go through this presentation. Let us begin. What everyone must know about vaping. Our eye care mission statement: to provide prevention education in the areas of alcohol, tobacco, other drugs, and violence to students and families within the East Baton Rouge schools and community. Our goal here at Eye Care: to equip pre-K to 12th grade students and families in participating EBR public and non-public schools with the knowledge and skills to make healthy lifestyle choices. Our 21st century vision: the East Baton Rouge school system students and staff will be educated about effective social emotional coping strategies and trauma-informed approaches in prevention education. Eye Care will advocate for students, community, and staff to have safe and drug-free schools while also empowering schools and families by providing resources, technology tools, and trainings in evidence-based prevention education. Now, our objectives for this vaping workshop. We want you to leave this presentation being able to recognize a variety of vape devices. We want you to be able to understand how vapes work. We want you to be able to identify health risks associated with vaping. Consider how vapes might be viewed as a gateway device. In this presentation, we will compare national and state data about the prevalence of vape use. We want you to be able to detect signs of vape use and factors that contribute to tobacco use. And finally, we want you to be able to access tools and resources to help youth quit vaping. From the outset of this presentation, just wondering, do you recognize any of the following? As you can see, there are some devices that are quite obvious, as well as some devices that are not as obvious. You see a couple of USB looking devices that are actually vaping devices. Vaping devices also disguised as everyday items. Look at the top left. We have a young lady who the drawstring of her hoodie is actually a vaping device. The next, you have a Sharpie. That's actually a vaping device. Smart watches, inhalers, even pens are being used as vaping devices, albeit disguised. The million-dollar question: what are vapes? Vapes are electronic cigarettes, commonly known as e-cigarettes, that are battery-powered devices that deliver nicotine, flavorings, and other ingredients to the user. Vapes produce an aerosol that contain harmful chemicals that you breathe. I want to pause right here and explain that this vape, this aerosol that comes, this plume of smoke that comes from the vaping product, most definitely can be harmful. Vapes are defined as by the media and by others who promote these devices as being less harmful. Please understand that less harmful is still yet harmful. How do vapes work? Vapes use a battery-powered heating element to heat up a type of liquid. These liquids contain nicotine, not only nicotine, but different flavorings that are dissolved in propylene glycol and or vegetable glycerin. When the liquid is heated, it creates an aerosol that is inhaled by the user. These e-liquids come in bottles for refilling vapes, or pre-filled cartridges, or even pods. These e-liquids are commonly known as e-juice. What's in a pod? Okay, this e-liquid, what's in this pod? There's nicotine, there's propylene glycol and or vegetable glycerin, and there are also flavoring compounds. E-liquid can have 60 to 70 compounds or ingredients. I want you to understand this. Some of these compounds and ingredients are fine for consumption, but can be detrimental if inhaled. Once again, consuming these substances in food products is considered safe, but we don't know if it's safe to breathe them into your lungs. A product that's definitely trending, it has taken the market by storm, is heated tobacco products, or HTPs. Heated tobacco products are simply tobacco products that require the use of an electronic device to heat a stick or pod of compressed tobacco. The stick, by definition, a cigarette or tobacco pod, is heated to a temperature high enough to produce an inhalable aerosol, but the temperature is below that which is required for full combustion. When you deal with heated tobacco products, what you are dealing with is heat versus combustion. In 2019, Philip Morris put out a new product, Heat Not Burn. It's not the same as an e-cigarette because they use tobacco to deliver the nicotine and not a liquid. Instead, a heat stick is filled with compressed ground tobacco, which is inserted into an electronic holder and heated at a lower temperature, which is 300 degrees Celsius. Combustion for a traditional cigarette occurs at 900 degrees Celsius. Thus, the HTP industry is promoting heated tobacco products as a safer alternative to cigarettes, not only cigarettes, but e-cigarettes as well. What's the problem with vaping nicotine? Vaping nicotine in the brain. Simply put, nicotine is brain poison. I'll say that again. Simply put, nicotine is brain poison. Nicotine changes the brain cell activity in the parts of the brain responsible for attention, learning, and memory. This use of nicotine can make a person anxious, irritable, and can make impulsivity even more worse. Nicotine also primes the brain for addiction to other drugs, including cocaine and methamphetamines. Vaping, nicotine, and the heart. Nicotine is harmful to your cardiovascular system. It raises the blood pressure and causes a spike in your adrenaline. It also damages the important blood vessels, causing an increase in heart rate and a chance of a heart attack. Take notice of this diagram and the different things that we have in this diagram. We have volatile organic compounds. We have nicotine. We have ultrafine particles, cancer-causing chemicals. We have heavy metals such as nickel, tin, and even lead. Flavorings such as diacetyl, a chemical linked to a serious lung disease. This next slide further explains these chemicals that can be found in vapes. Vaping nicotine and the lungs, aerosol contains chemicals that can cause serious lung problems. Diacetyl, a butter-flavored chemical that's been linked to lung disease. Formaldehyde, a chemical in building materials and household products that can cause cancer. We also know formaldehyde as being a preserving agent for bodies. Acrolein, a herbicide linked to lung injury and COPD that could cause lung cancer. Benzene, a carcinogenic chemical used to make plastics, dyes, and pesticides. As mentioned previously, heavy metals like nickel, tin, and lead. Vaping is linked to developing asthma and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, better known as COPD.
Good morning, everybody. So one of the things is, then why do people do it? Well, it was originally promoted. And why is it so popular? It was originally promoted as an alternative. It was going to be something that was safe in order for people to maybe stop smoking. And so as that got promoted, one thing that they learned is they could get people hooked really easy. And so one of the things they did is they began to design it a certain way. They began to provide flavors that would that students or kids would like. They began to market it with really sleek designs, and there began to be slogans and advertisements and commercials and everything, and a lot of social media. So as a result of that, a lot of students were able to pick up on it, and a lot of young people were able to pick up on it. Now, this slide is actually kind of an older slide, but it's good because it represents something. So Juul became the primary one. We actually had to take that slide out because things have evolved so quickly. And so Juul was the one that ended up looking like a flash drive. And as a result, it was able to, kind of sneak in, and it was able to be sleek. It looked like something that students were familiar with. And of course, adults were not. And so Juul really blew up. And one of the reasons it blew up, not only did it have that cool design, but then it also had all these flavors. And but what has recently happened is that Juul has gotten in a lot of trouble, a lot of legal issues. And so they've had to reduce all of their flavors. Now they only have like menthol and I think like what they call Virginia tobacco. So the original intent is that it would taste and look like a cigarette to get people off of it, right? Not that it really does. But the thing that I want you to notice on this is notice where they get things from. Notice where they get devices from, or where they get the e-juice from, or any of this. Notice that, sure, 74%, they can go to a retail location. Maybe they can get it online like some of them do. But notice that it's a social source. Notice that they get it from someone that they already know. And then so how do they get around it? And here's the interesting thing. So the law had gotten where if it was, the law was, hold on, let me make sure something real quick. Oh, okay. Okay. Let me see. Can you guys, is that better? Is my volume up a little bit more? Is that better? Okay. Let me know if you can't hear me, or someone let me know. So, but a few things, the way that I'm just following orders. So I'm trying to see if you can hear me or not hear me. But one of the things that they've done is they came up with disposable vapes. That's a loophole in the law. So where all of a sudden you can no longer have these pre-filled cartridges, and that was marketing towards teens with certain flavors like that I would never choose. It was like honey doo doo, or strawberry, whatever. And they changed that. Well, what happened is they came up with disposable vapes. And so as a result of that, they can market to these students because it's not something that's found in the cartridge itself. And so a disposable vape, or what in many cases some call it a puff bar, because a puff bar is a type, and there's actually several types, right? So you can see a couple of these here. And you can see some of the more high end. You can see the most popular that are there. But I want you to notice to the right. Look at the design. Look who that's marketed to. Look who that's trying to target. And as a result, as a disposable vape, they can take it, they can buy it, they can use it. It can even offer up into 800 hits and then throw it away. Being a parent who has had a student that struggled with that. Being an eye care worker who knows that many parents who have come to us and asked us, one of the things we used to be able to tell them was look around the room, look carefully. Well, this kind of, if you can't hide it, well, what you can do is just throw it away. So now you've got a throwaway device that goes around a legal loophole, and then it's also still marketed to students by looking at the flavors and looking at the design of it. So that's just an example of why it becomes so popular. So one of the things you may be wondering, um, is that what is the next step? And so this is really probably my concern. Once again, just being honest, being transparent, having a daughter that that this became an issue for, it actually became a gateway device. And so when we're in the when we're speaking to students, a lot of times what we try to explain is if you have a device and it has a cartridge that looks one way, and students get used to that, whether it's nicotine or whatever it is, and it's flavorful. Well, it's when that device can be removed and another device can be added to it, or something else can be put into those devices, well, then it's a quick jump from I was doing tobacco or I was doing nicotine to whatever else is in those devices. And so vapes are a gateway device because it can be quickly refilled with something that people are already familiar with. And so you can get pre-filled cartridges that have THC in them. You can see that some of the pod cartridges are adapted to hold concentrated marijuana known as dabs or wax. And so a couple of things that we see, things that can be added to water. So if it can be added to water, most likely they can vape it. So you look at LSD, you look at GHB, ketamine, those things, by the way, at the end, all of those are hallucinogens. And so those things can be added. We do get asked what all can be put in it. We mentioned things like crack, heroin, meth. The reason that those aren't usually added into it is because of the difficulty of those being vaporized because of the heat necessary. So um, just a little bit of talk about THC and CBD, though. CBD, as you know, you see it around, and I think this is true for our adults as well. We see a lot of marketing for CBD. We realize that it comes from the hemp plant. We understand all of those things. We understand that it does have some properties that helps with inflammation, and it can help with some other issues. But what's happened is students see that CBD sign and they see that marijuana plant behind it and they immediately think that they're doing something cool or cooler or maybe halfway illegal or whatever it is. And one of the things we try to help them to understand is you still are being marketed to. So are adults. We remind them that if you have inflammation, you could take Tylenol. It's just not that cool. If you're having issues with lotion or whatever, you can just buy lotion. So it's just funny how that's been marketed. However, once again, the jump of having CBD, thinking that you're somewhere kind of between the line of legal and illegal, you got a marijuana plant there, then it's not a far jump from CBD to THC, which is the main or the significant psychoactive ingredient in marijuana that gives you the high. And so what I always tell people, and especially students, because I'd rather them not even get close. If you were actually high, if someone had THC, they were smoking marijuana, and you actually had CBD, the CBD would actually lower the effects of the THC. And so just something for maybe for our adults and for our students to know. So some of the concerns, though, and these are significant concerns, as you can see on there, we have several, like 60 deaths with patients, and all of those are connected to people using THC. And on most of those are with those that have either black market or modified cartridges. And so just being aware that when we hear that marijuana is not harmful, we hear, well, it's not addictive, no one's ever died from it, no one can overdose. You hear all of the things. Well, that's not true, depending on how you get it and what it's in and what form it's found in. And so when you put those things together and you see that there's been 60 deaths just in 2020 alone, that's concerning. And knowing that kids have already bought into the lie that it's harmless, just for us to be aware of that. So I say that to parents for sure. I say that for concerned social workers and mental health people. So the CDC regarding vapes, a couple of things that are real recommendations, and I think the obvious is to not use it, to not use a THC containing e-cigarette, because we've already seen the effects, we've already seen the deaths, and because they can link that directly to those things, I think it's something for people to recognize. I shouldn't be using it in this device. But I also think, and we say this all the time, that if students are going to go out and do these things and experiment, or try new things, one of the things we say is it is very dangerous for them not to know what is in the source. And so if I was speaking to a student who said, yes, this is something I'm going to do, and even though I was trying to dissuade them not to do it, and encourage them, of the dangers, if they were going to do it, the one thing I think that's important for us to understand is that knowing the source and where they're getting it from, watching that people can fill the cartridge with anything that they want. Personally, having a cousin who it was another drug, but when someone put fentanyl in the drug, and of course he overdosed and died, and so I think it's important that people understand that if they are going to do it, we're not encouraging them to do it, but if they are, we're going to encourage people to know that be as safe as they could. And so one of those things is to avoid an informal source, getting it around the street where normally it would cost $20, but you got it from Fred down the street for $2. That's probably not the right thing. Or when someone has modified it and they said they figured out a way or a new way to get a high or whatever it is. And so I've just work at a mental hospital. And for those of you that can connect to this, you've probably seen people come in that have been in psychosis and never had it before, don't know if they're going to get out of it. Maybe it's 3 days, maybe it's 4 days, maybe it's a month. Personally, once again, because this is what, we do and what I do. Seen people have psychosis because of something that was, in a vape or that was offered to them, and they haven't come out of that yet. And so it's a real danger. It's a real concern. It's not just about vaping. It's about the substances that can be placed in it, and practicing, just really safe habits with that. So a couple of things you might want to know. A couple of some data that's out there. We see that 85% of those that are going to use it choose flavored e-cigs. Before they banned Juul, really it was up to 97%. We see that disposables are becoming the more popular use. You see that 1 in 4 people are using e-cigs. So that's a big deal, and that's from the National Youth Tobacco Survey. So that's a lot. That's considerable amount of students in the last couple of years. So a couple of the graphs that might look encouraging, but I think are a little deceiving. I hope not. I hope it's because of our campaigns, and I hope it's because we're really helping people to understand the risk associated with it. But if you notice that the trend, it exploded in the graph, whether it was high school or whether it was middle school, the numbers were going up significantly, 2018, 2019. But then there's been a drastic decrease recently, or in some graphs, it shows that it's just kind of bottomed out. I think if we look at this graph and another one that's coming up, like the CCYS that we use here, our Caring Community Youth Survey, you're going to notice a couple of things. Now, you're going to see the arrows that are pointing at stuff. And so the yellow, the blue, and well, let me make sure I'm looking right because it's small on my screen. But the orange, the yellow, and the blue. The orange represents 2016. The yellow is 2018, and the blue is 2020. And what you notice is, and I've got my little arrows pointing to them, that there is a increase 2016, increase 2018, and a decrease in 2020. That is across the board for 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th graders. And so you can see here with our 10th and 12th graders as well. I think what we could safely say, and by the way, that's tobacco use 30-day, that's lifetime use, that's e-cigarette use. I think what we could say, especially knowing and remembering having to do this data with the high, in our schools, we had a limited number of students that were answering these questionnaires. We had a limited number of students who were even on campus to be able to fill out these surveys. And with the difficulty we're operating with virtual and all of that, I would have to think that the data is relatively skewed. I want to be extremely optimistic, but I also recognize that we've been in a pandemic, and that has altered a lot of things, and I think it's probably altered some of this data. So I think we continue to need to be pretty vigilant about that. So
Okay, now we're going to get into some of the laws when it comes as it relates to vaping. As of December 20th, 2019, the federal minimum age of sale for tobacco products was raised from 18 to 21 years of age. As of June 16th, 2021, Louisiana law made it illegal for anyone under the age of 21 to buy, possess, or sell vape products. I want you to notice this. Possession of a vape by persons under age 21 is prohibited unless accompanied by a parent or in a private residence, similar to the MIP statute. This is our policy in the East Baton Rouge Parish School System. The offense, possession or use of cigarette, lighter, tobacco products, smoking objects, or device, including electronic cigarettes or similar devices, could result in a suspension, or once this device is taken, our SROs on site will take the device, take the cartridge, get it tested. If it's found to be THC or whatever else, or any other modified agents or ingredients in that vape, that suspension could be moved up to an expulsion. How can you tell if your student might be vaping, or a child, a young adult might be vaping in general? I want you to pay close attention to these signs of youth vaping, because this slide is very important when it comes to signs of youth vaping. One sign is increased thirst. Vaping removes hydration from the skin, especially around the mouth and throat. So increased thirst definitely is a sign. Nosebleeds, when the skin around the nose can crack due to the lack of moisture. When you are vaping, when you are inhaling, it removes the moisture from areas that definitely need moisture. What is known as vapor's tongue? When moisture in the mouth is compromised, you can lose flavor perception. If your child is taking an interest in spicier foods, or is suddenly looking to add more spices or salt to his or her meals, it may be a sign that they are vaping. Skin damage. Your child's skin is becoming irritated or damaged when it once was clear. An increase in red spots and worsening acne can be indicative of vaping. This next one is very important. Sleep disturbance. People who vape tend to have their sleep patterns disrupted. Children may stay up later than usual, may have difficulty falling asleep, or may even be restless during sleep. Emotional problems. If you can remember in the previous slide, we dealt with how nicotine and THC can cause irritability and things of that nature, can cause depression. Emotional problems. As the nicotine and other substances in the vaping device can affect the brain chemistry, a child who is vaping may have increased irritability or frustration. Passing on caffeine. The combination of caffeine and vaping can cause alarming mood swings and or increased anxiety. A child who normally likes to take a cup of coffee or likes to drink soda may suddenly start cutting back to mitigate these effects. Here's some factors associated with youth tobacco product use. The social and physical environments. Mass media is marketing our youth. Mass media show tobacco product use as a normal activity, and it can make youth want to try these products. Our youth tend to see people engaging in these activities that look just like them or in their same age bracket, which cause them to find themselves using the products. High school athletes are more likely to use smokeless tobacco than those of the same age who are not athletes. Young people may be more likely to use tobacco products if a parent uses these products. There are some biological and genetic factors when we deal with vaping and tobacco use. There is evidence that youth may be sensitive to nicotine and that teens can feel dependent on nicotine sooner than adults. Genetic factors may make quitting smoking harder for young people. Smoking during pregnancy may increase the likelihood that the child will smoke cigarettes regularly in the future. Mental health. There's a strong relationship between youth smoking and depression, anxiety, and stress. Personal views. When young people expect positive things from smoking, such as coping with stress better or losing weight, they are more likely to smoke. Here are some other influences that affect youth tobacco use: lower socioeconomic status, simply not knowing how to say no, the lack of support or involvement from parents. Mr. Pete dealt with a slide with accessibility. So the accessibility, availability, and price of tobacco products. Doing poorly in school, low self-image or self-esteem, seeing tobacco product advertising in stores, on television, the internet, in movies, or in magazines and newspapers. Mr. Pete brought this up previously about knowing what's in your vape. There have been situations where vapes have been taken up and shards of glass have even been found in those cartridges. So you must know the risk involved.
Yeah, so one of the things we want to make sure is that these students know how to break up with their vapes, right? They want to be able to find a way out, and we want to be able to give them resources. We know that the Truth Initiative, those are the ones that have been familiar throughout the years, that have spoken about cigarettes and the dangers of those, tobaccos, the dangers of those, how dangerous those are. And so we've seen most of those advertisements. We've seen the little cigarette, and as the smoke rises up, it like makes a skull, and some of those people talk about fear, and maybe that doesn't work, but actually it had done extremely well. And it's ironic because it's almost that cigarette smoking had almost been eradicated. It was seen as dirty and gross and cancer causing, and then all of a sudden they came back around with the e-cigarette, and they figured out a way. And so a couple of things to notice is that in the Truth Initiative, I love it because they're making sure, just as students and young people were targeted, they've provided them a way to find help. So notice how it's done. Notice that it says teens and young adults that they can text. Notice it says ditch vape, or it gives you a number that it can text, or you can go ahead and log on. And what it does is it gives you all sorts of information. It tells you all of the dangers. It provides motivation. It provides inspiration, support as people are working through the process. I think a lot of times we promote something and we do it once, and then we assume that that was good enough. But what they're there for is to continue to provide information, continue to provide support, and it's in a way that's familiar with that age group. So really think they do a good job, and it's something that you can, if you know anybody that's struggling. I literally got asked this question just the other day. Somebody that is struggling with vaping, and where can you go? This is a great resource, and that actually allows them. Sometimes we want them to go to their parents and want to encourage that. But a lot of them who have gotten involved with it, maybe it's an athlete or whatever it may be, they don't want anybody to know, but they do want to quit and they need support. This is an excellent way to do that. So I want to encourage that. And then also some resources that you see for parents. These are things that you can know. This is what I got asked. These are the things that, parents, adults, mental health workers, people in the eye care profession, people that are, counselors, people that are like, well, what can we know? We don't know enough about it. What informations can we get, whether it's for our children or for the children that see us. Once again, look at the resources and how quickly they are for you. Notice that it talks about you can sign up, and it can indicate to the parent of the young people about vapes, access to supportive online community, full interactive website full of information for nicotine addiction. All of those things are there. Once again, similar type of thing, but in line for adults and for parents. And I'm going to tell you something else that I found, and I think Melvin would agree with this. When you can kind of know the lingo a little bit, students believe that you're more familiar with what they're walking through. And so even though I know we're like, well, I don't really know that. I don't really, it's not my world, or, I'm just going to tell them to stop. Knowing lingo lets people know that you can kind of identify where they are. And we are in the business of letting students know that we care and that we're going to meet them right where they are. And so these are good things just for us to know, because I mean, honestly, not having worked in eye care, I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have probably done a lot of research. And then once again, then it happens to you. And I walk through a daughter. I work with teens a lot, and then having to do this. And when they're speaking to me, they're speaking their native language, right? They're speaking it, and if I don't know what they're saying, I don't know how to help. And so we want to encourage you to look at these resources so that you can know that language and that you can speak it, and so that they can identify with you and you can understand what they're really telling you. So these are good things for you as well. Once again, Quit Tools, we see this as another resource, another opportunity for students to be able to go online. And I know that as I look at this, there's some of you like, yeah, I got the first one, but once again, I have people that ask all the time. There's plenty of resources out there that are offered, and so once again, this is another one that you can look and notice that it gives you a personalized vaping quit plan. And I think that's really neat. I don't know for any of you that you started some sort of dieting plan at the new year, or you started to do something. It's always been shown you can have the best intentions, but without a plan, it's not going to work. And so the idea that they can have their own plan unique to them, that they can see results, they can see like an end game. Those things are proven effective. And so this is also a great tool for you. Some tips for parents. One of the things, now I'm going to tell you, I'm going to ask Melvin to go ahead and take this part for me.
Okay, no problem. Thank you, Mr. Pete. Here's some tips for parents and guardians. The first one right off the bat: know the facts. Empower yourself to talk with your child about the dangers of vaping by knowing the facts with resources found at the cdc.gov/e-cigarettes and e-cigarettes. And it gives you that. Mr. Pete has gone through several different resources. These resources can help you understand and know the facts. Talk to your child or teen about why e-cigarettes are harmful for them. Don't assume that your child knows about the dangers of vaping. Talk with your child and share information in a calm manner. Many youth and young adults are in situations where they don't know the dangers, and they're simply vaping because it's cool, because it satisfies a needs. In their mind, it allows them to cope with stress better. But talk with your teens, your child, about the danger. As I stated before, less harmful is yet harmful. Remind and repeat. Teaching your child about the dangers of vaping won't happen in one sitting. Consider this an ongoing conversation. You will need to address this subject matter over and over again, because this subject is forever evolving. Right now, the trend is HTPs, heated tobacco products. Who knows what the new trend will be a day from now, a month from now, or a year from now? Know what to look for. E-cigarettes come in various shapes and sizes. You have seen multiple slides of the various disguises, USB devices, in the hoodies, the string of a hoodie, things of that nature. Some e-cigarettes can even appear similar to USB devices and look like flash drives. Look for warning signs: that increased thirst, that desire for spicier foods, that acne, the red spots. Are they restless? Have they become very irritable all of a sudden? The last one: set a good example. Be tobacco free. Here are some additional resources. We cannot give you enough resources. So you have the American Heart Association. You have the American Lung Association. One of the things when it comes to vaping and the lungs that we didn't talk about, but I'll address, is a thing called popcorn lungs, where the airways become narrow as a result of vaping. And if a person gets popcorn lungs, this damage is irreversible. You also have the CDC. Talk with your teens about e-cigarettes, which gives a tip sheet for parents. We're going to pause to take time to see if there are, by any chance, any questions.
Okay, Pete and Melvin, there is a question in the chat box.
You might want to unmute.
Excuse me? Unmute. Maybe I have to turn my volume up. Is that better?
A little bit.
Okay. Is there additional punitive damage to students? Are they only subjected to suspension or expulsion? SRO in some areas are involving police action and having students charged.
Yes, and it goes parish-wide. There may be one parish that handles something one way and another parish that handles it a different way. So yes, in other parishes, there may be more punitive damages such as charges and things of that nature. As far as EBR, it is the suspension or expulsion. And depending on what's found in there, it could be even more punitive damages. So yes, it could even go beyond expulsion. But keep in mind, with different parishes come different consequences. That is a great question.
Is that it?
Does anybody else have any other questions that you would like to ask Mr. Melvin or Mr. Pete regarding what you need to know about vaping and our youth? All right. Well, I'm going to turn on my video. Okay. So I want to just remind all of our participants today that in order to get your certificate for attending today's presentation, you will need to complete the evaluation and by 4:30 today, and your certificate will be emailed within the next 2 weeks. If you have any questions regarding your certificate, you can reach Chandra DeLone at 225-226-2273 here at the eye care office. And we would like to thank our presenters, Mr. Pete and Mr. Melvin, for doing a fabulous job today. And if anybody has any final remarks or any final questions.
I would personally like to thank everyone who participated. It was an honor and a privilege to be able to do this presentation and be a part of the education of what needs to be known as far as vaping. So thank you for clicking that link to be a part of this presentation. We do not take it for granted. We thank you very much. Mr. Pete has something to say.
Yeah, I do too. I want to thank you so much for being a part. I've gotten a couple of texts from people letting me know that they could see us in our part, so we appreciate that. And hopefully it was informative. And for some of you, I realize that you're watching, you're in our schools, and you may not be asking the questions now, but hopefully it's raised some questions. And so if you want to catch us in your schools, so I do want to thank you so much for that. And also I want you to know I probably went a little fast. I was having some difficulty seeing, and so if there was something I rambled through and you didn't hear it, I want you to know I'd be happy to answer that in person as well for some of you that I've seen, or you can still do that now. I do want to highlight one thing that we didn't mention. I think that's important, is that at a young age we're reminded that our brains are forming, and so when we talk about the idea of addiction, we forget that it's being formed. And it's being formed with whatever we add to it, and we use an example a lot of times of of Legos. And when we do that, and we're adding those pieces in, whatever you build, if you chose red blocks, then it's built with red blocks. If you chose blue blocks, it's built with that. And so when we add nicotine, it actually hijacks the reward pathway, and you begin to build a brain that finds an easier way out rather than dealing with anxiety this way or dealing with depression this way or dealing with stress this way. It learns a new way, which is now a shortcut that was never designed to be there. So it is significant when we talk about addiction for these young kids because we may not see it as tobacco addiction. It may not be that they continue to use that substance. What we may see is this heightened stress, anxiety, depression, and an inability to cope in those areas. And so I think it's important to notice those things as well. So it's one of the things that I meant to highlight. I meant to jump in and I didn't, but hopefully that's helpful as well. Genuinely, like we're really grateful that you guys came on, and thank y'all so much for being a part. We appreciate it.
And to piggyback off of what Mr. Pete said, to add one last thing dealing with the brain, keep in mind that the brain continues to develop to the age of 25. So that brain is not fully developed until age 25. So when a young adult, a young person starts doing these things, it definitely, like he said, it disrupts the reward pathway and disrupts the entire development of the brain.
And so real quick, we did have a question about if you could obtain a copy of this presentation, and that's very possible if you just reach out to the eye care office at 225-226-2273. And you can also check the bios for Mr. Melvin and Mr. Pete, where their email will be available to you, and they can shoot you that email. Okay. I don't see any other questions or lots of comments. So thank you for your participation, and we hope you enjoyed our presentation today and learned something that you might not have learned prior to this morning. I hope you all have a wonderful day.